She interrupted the judge, and her words changed everything. No one in the courtroom expected such a turnaround. Subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching us from. Anna's life changed forever on a rainy November afternoon. Just weeks earlier, her parents had been taken from her in a devastating car accident. The social worker's voice had been calm and rehearsed as she explained the situation. At 9 years old, Anna didn't fully grasp what permanency meant, but the word foster sounded cold. It felt like a placeholder, as though she were just being passed along to someone who didn't truly want her. She clutched her small suitcase as she was driven through a clean suburban neighborhood where the lawns were freshly mowed and the houses stood like perfect postcards. When they arrived at the Miller's house, Anna wasn't sure what to expect. The social worker assured her they were wonderful people who had opened their hearts and home to children in need. The house itself was enormous, with white shutters and a porch swing that creaked faintly in the wind. As the car pulled into the driveway, the front door opened, and Lauren and Michael Miller stepped out, beaming as though they had been waiting their entire lives for this moment. Lauren was petite, with a sleek blonde bob and perfectly tailored clothes. She crouched down to Anna's level, her painted smile never faltering. "Oh, Anna," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. "We are so thrilled to have you here. Aren't we, Michael?" Michael, a tall man with a polished demeanor, nodded. His handshake was firm but cold when he greeted Anna. "Welcome home," he said, as if practicing lines for a performance. "We're so happy you're here." Anna murmured a polite, "Thank you," and kept her gaze on the ground. Something about their overly rehearsed enthusiasm made her stomach churn. She wanted to believe that this was a fresh start, but her instincts whispered otherwise. Inside, the house was even grander than it looked from the outside. Gleaming hardwood floors reflected sunlight pouring in through spotless windows. Family portraits adorned the walls, showcasing Lauren and Michael in various stages of their lives, often surrounded by smiling friends or community awards. Yet, as Anna took it all in, she realized there were no photos of other children. "Come, Anna," Lauren chirped, guiding her past the polished dining table set for 4. "Let me show you to your room." Anna followed her up the stairs, the smell of lavender air freshener thick in the air. But instead of turning toward the bedrooms upstairs, Lauren led her to a narrow staircase leading down into the basement. Anna hesitated on the top step. "It's just temporary," Lauren said with a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're renovating upstairs, but you'll be comfortable down here." The basement was dimly lit, with a single small window near the ceiling. A twin bed with a thin floral blanket sat in the corner, and a worn-out dresser leaned slightly to one side. The air was cold, carrying a faint smell of mildew. Anna set her suitcase down next to the bed, her heart sinking. "This is lovely," the social worker said awkwardly, her cheerfulness faltering for just a moment. "I'm sure you'll settle in just fine, Anna." The Millers nodded in agreement, their smiles fixed in place. Anna nodded too, though she didn't feel fine at all. Over the next few days, Anna tried her best to adjust. At first, Lauren and Michael seemed attentive, always asking if she was comfortable or needed anything. They even gave her a shiny pink notebook, telling her it could be her diary. But as the days turned into weeks, their attentiveness faded, replaced by sharp tones and strict rules. "You should be grateful," Lauren snapped one morning when Anna hesitated to eat the cold oatmeal she'd been served for breakfast. "We're doing everything for you." Anna's school life didn't feel much better. Her clothes, passed down from other foster children the Millers had taken in before her, didn't fit quite right. The other kids whispered about her behind her back, calling her the charity kid. During recess, she often sat alone near the edge of the playground, pretending not to notice the cliques forming around her. Her teacher, Miss Carter, was the only one who seemed to notice. She would sometimes kneel beside Anna's desk during math or writing exercises, speaking in a soft tone that made Anna feel safe for fleeting moments. But even then, Anna found it hard to open up. What could she say? That she felt like an intruder in her own home? Back at the Millers, the facade of kindness continued to crack. They never physically hurt her, but their words stung just as much. Lauren would criticize everything she did, how she folded the laundry, the way she walked, even the tone of her voice when she answered a question. "Why can't you just get it right?" she hissed one evening when Anna forgot to wipe the counter after washing dishes. Michael was less involved, spending most of his time in his office or watching sports in the living room. But when he did interact with Anna, his voice carried an edge that made her flinch. "We're the best thing that's ever happened to you," he said one evening as she timidly asked for seconds at dinner. "Don't forget that." On Sundays, they took her to church, where they proudly introduced her to the congregation. "Our little Anna," Lauren would say, her hand resting possessively on Anna's shoulder. "We're so blessed to have her." The parishioners smiled and nodded, some even praising the Millers for their selflessness. Anna didn't speak much during these outings, too afraid to disrupt the image they worked so hard to maintain. One evening, as Anna was cleaning the kitchen after dinner, she overheard Loran and Michael talking in the living room. She crept closer to the doorway, her heart racing. "I told you, this isn't about her," Lauren was saying, her voice low but sharp. "It's about appearances. The church loves us for this. The neighborhood loves us. Do you know how much easier it'll be to get that grant for the shelter project now?" Michael chuckled. "And the stipends aren't bad either. She's not costing us anything. If anything, she's paying us." Anna froze, her breath catching in her throat. She clutched the edge of the counter, her knuckles turning white. Their words confirmed what she had feared all along. She was nothing more than a tool to them, a pawn in their game of public admiration. That night, lying on the thin mattress in the basement, Anna stared at the notebook they had given her. She flipped it open and began to write. It wasn't much, a few short sentences about what she'd overheard, but it was the first step. Deep down, she knew she couldn't let this continue. She just didn't know how to stop it yet. The days blurred together into a monotonous routine for Anna. Each morning began with the sound of Lauren's sharp voice calling down the basement stairs, reminding her not to be late for school. Breakfast was a joyless affair, a small bowl of oatmeal or toast, always served cold. Anna learned quickly to eat in silence, avoiding eye contact with either Lauren or Michael, whose moods shifted unpredictably. At school, Anna found refuge in the relative normalcy of her classroom, though she still felt like an outsider. Her classmates whispered behind her back about her outdated clothes and worn shoes. The cruelest comments weren't always spoken aloud, but came in the form of stares and smirks that made her want to shrink into herself. She stayed quiet, avoiding confrontation, but her teacher, Miss Carter, continued to notice. Miss Carter had an uncanny ability to spot even the smallest details. Anna's reluctance to raise her hand, the way she flinched when someone tapped her on the shoulder, the bruises she tried to hide beneath long sleeves. But every time she gently asked Anna if something was wrong, the girl would shake her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. Miss Carter didn't push, but the concern in her eyes lingered long after their conversations ended. At home, the Millers' behavior became increasingly hostile. Lauren's expectations for Anna's chores grew more demanding. The list on the refrigerator seemed to grow daily. Clean the bathrooms, vacuum the carpets, dust the shelves. If anything wasn't done to Loran's exacting standards, there were consequences. One evening, after school, Anna was scrubbing the kitchen floor when Lauren entered, her heels clicking against the tiles. She inspected the room with a critical eye before stopping abruptly. "Why's there still grime in the corners?" Lauren demanded, pointing with a manicured finger. Anna, already on her knees, looked up, her heart pounding. I'll fix it," she stammered, reaching for the sponge. "Fix it?" Lauren's voice rose. "You should have done it right the first time. Do you think we enjoy having you here, Anna? Do you think we owe you something?" Anna kept her eyes on the floor, her hands trembling. "No, ma'am." Lauren's expression softened into something that almost resembled pity, but her words were razor-sharp. "Good. Then remember that. You're here because we were kind enough to take you in. If you can't show gratitude, maybe you don't belong here at all." It was a threat she'd heard before, but it never failed to send a chill down her spine. The implication was clear. If Anna stepped out of line, she could lose the only semblance of stability she had, no matter how fragile or cruel it was. Michael was no better. Though he didn't involve himself in the day-to-day discipline, his rare interactions with Anna were laced with disdain. One night at dinner, Anna hesitated to take a second helping of the overcooked casserole on the table. Her stomach growled, but she had learned to tread carefully when it came to asking for more. "What's the matter?" Michael said, his tone mocking. "You don't like it? Or are you just waiting for us to serve you like royalty?" Anna's face flushed. "No, sir, I'm not." "Then take it," he snapped, pushing the serving dish toward her with enough force to rattle the plates. "But don't waste it. God knows we've already wasted enough on you." That night, as Anna lay in bed, she stared at the ceiling, the weight of their words pressing down on her. She thought of the Millers' polished smiles at church, their boasts about their selfless decision to take her in, and the way they turned into different people behind closed doors. It wasn't fair. None of it was. She reached for the pink notebook on her nightstand and began writing again. This time her words were more deliberate. She described how Lauren had grabbed her arm earlier in the week, leaving a faint bruise. She wrote about Michael's cutting remarks and how she overheard them talking about the foster care stipends they received. She didn't know what she would do with the notebook, but it felt good to put the truth somewhere. It made her feel a little less invisible. The turning point came a few weeks later. Miss Carter had asked Anna to stay after class one day to help organize some books. As they worked side by side in the quiet classroom, Miss Carter noticed how Anna winced when she lifted a particularly heavy stack of textbooks. "Are you okay?" Miss Carter asked gently. Anna hesitated, then nodded quickly. "I'm fine." Miss Carter didn't press, but as Anna reached for another book, her sleeve slipped up, revealing a faint yellow-green bruise on her wrist. Miss Carter froze. "Anna," she said softly, "how did you get that?" Anna froze too, her pulse racing. She pulled her sleeve down and muttered, "It's nothing. I just bumped into something." Miss Carter crouched down so they were eye level. "Anna, you can tell me if something's wrong. I'm here to help." For a moment, Anna considered telling her everything. She wanted to, but fear won out. What if the Millers found out? What if no one believed her? She shook her head. "I'm fine, really." Miss Carter didn't look convinced, but she let it go for now. She knew pushing too hard might scare Anna off, and she wasn't ready to lose the fragile trust she had built. That evening, back at the Miller's house, Lauren's anger boiled over again. Anna had accidentally knocked over a vase while dusting, and shards of porcelain littered the floor. Lauren's fury was immediate and relentless. "You clumsy little brat!" she screamed, grabbing Anna by the arm and yanking her to her feet. "Do you have any idea how much that cost?" Michael appeared in the doorway, his arms crossed. "What happened now?" "She broke the vase," Lauren hissed, her nails digging into Anna's skin. "I told you, Michael. She doesn't belong here. She's nothing but trouble." Anna's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she didn't dare cry. She wanted to scream that it wasn't her fault, that she was trying her best, but she knew it wouldn't matter. To them, she was just a burden. Later that night, as she sat alone in the dimly lit basement, Anna clutched her notebook tightly. Her arm ached where Lauren had grabbed her, and her heart ached even more. She couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. The next day at school, Miss Carter noticed the bruise on Anna's arm had deepened. She didn't say anything at first, but as Anna packed her things to leave, Miss Carter gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Anna," she said softly, "I want you to know that my door is always open. If you ever need to talk about anything at all, I'm here." Anna nodded, her throat tight. She wasn't ready to talk yet, but Miss Carter's words stayed with her. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face this alone. The courtroom was cavernous, its high ceilings and cold marble walls amplifying every sound. Anna sat at a long table beside Miss Carter, her hands clenched in her lap. The pink notebook she had used to record every detail of her life with the Millers was tucked securely into Miss Carter's bag. Anna had spent the past week preparing for this day, but now that it had arrived, her stomach churned with anxiety. Across the room, Lauren and Michael sat at their own table, dressed impeccably in tailored suits. Lauren dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her face the picture of sorrowful determination, while Michael maintained a stoic expression, his lips pressed into a thin line. Their lawyer, a sharply dressed man with a briefcase full of notes, leaned towards them, whispering instructions. They looked like a portrait of dignity and respectability. Anna felt small and insignificant in comparison. The judge, a stern woman with sharp features and an air of authority, entered the room. Everyone stood as she took her seat behind the bench, her gavel striking once to call the court to order. "This court will now hear the case of Anna Johnson versus Loran and Michael Miller," the judge announced, her voice steady and commanding. "The allegations include neglect, emotional abuse, and misuse of foster care funds. Both parties will have the opportunity to present their evidence and testimony. Let us begin." The Miller's lawyer rose first, walking to the center of the room with an air of practiced confidence. He began his opening statement, painting a picture of Loran and Michael as devoted foster parents who had taken in a troubled child out of the goodness of their hearts. "My clients, Loran and Michael Miller, have gone above and beyond to provide a stable, loving home for Anna," he said, his voice smooth and measured. "Fostering a child is no easy task, and they have faced this challenge with grace and perseverance. Unfortunately, Anna, like many children in the foster system, has struggled to adapt. These allegations are not only false, but a result of misunderstandings and the challenges of fostering a child with a difficult past." Anna stared at the table, her fists clenching tighter. Every word felt like a slap in the face. The lawyer continued, weaving a narrative in which Anna was the problem, a troubled child who couldn't appreciate the sacrifices the Millers had made for her. When the lawyer finished, Lauren took the stand first. She adjusted her posture, her hands folded neatly in her lap, and looked directly at the judge with watery eyes. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling, "taking Anna into our home was a blessing. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but we wanted to give her the stability and love she deserved. We've done everything in our power to make her feel like part of our family, but she's been distant, uncooperative, and, at times, even combative." She paused, letting a tear slip down her cheek for dramatic effect. "It breaks my heart to think that she feels otherwise. We've sacrificed so much for her, and to hear these accusations, it's devastating." The judge listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Lauren finished, Michael took the stand. His approach was more measured, his tone calm but firm. "I won't deny that fostering has its challenges," he said, glancing briefly at Anna. "But we took Anna in because we believed we could help her. These allegations are unfounded and deeply hurtful. We've done nothing but provide for her, and I believe this is just a misunderstanding." Anna felt her chest tighten as she listened. Their words were so convincing, their delivery so polished, that for a moment she doubted herself. But then she remembered the bruises, the threats, the cold, calculated smiles. She couldn't let them get away with it. When it was Miss Carter's turn to speak, she presented the evidence Anna had collected: audio recordings of Lauren's sharp, berating voice, photos of bruises on Anna's arms and wrists, and financial documents showing that the Millers had spent the foster care stipends on lavish personal expenses rather than on Anna's needs. The courtroom grew tense as the recordings played, Lauren's harsh words echoing through the room. "You're worthless. Do you think we're lucky to have you? You're lucky we didn't send you back already." Michael's voice followed, colder and more menacing. "Just stay out of the way and keep your mouth shut. You don't matter to anyone." The judge's expression darkened as she listened, and Lauren and Michael shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their lawyer objected, claiming the recordings were taken out of context, but the damage had already been done. Finally, it was Anna's turn. Her name was called, and she felt every pair of eyes in the room turned toward her. Her legs trembled as she stood and made her way to the witness stand. Miss Carter gave her a reassuring nod as she passed. Sitting in the witness chair, Anna felt her heart pounding in her chest. The judge's gaze was steady but not unkind. "Take your time," she said. "Speak the truth." Anna took a deep breath, clutching the edges of the chair. At first, her words came out hesitantly, but as she spoke, she gained momentum. "They're lying," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "They don't care about me. At home, they yell at me, call me names, and tell me I'm worthless. Lauren grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises. They only act nice when other people are watching." The Miller's lawyer interrupted, trying to discredit her testimony, but Anna raised her voice, her frustration boiling over. "They don't even use the money they get for me on me," she shouted. "I heard them say it. They spend it on themselves, on vacations and clothes and expensive dinners. They told me no one would believe me because I'm just a foster kid, but it's true." The courtroom fell silent. The judge leaned forward slightly, her brow furrowed. "Do you have evidence of this?" she asked. Anna nodded and gestured to Miss Carter, who handed the pink notebook to the bailiff. Inside were detailed notes Anna had written about her experiences, as well as receipts and financial records she had found in Michael's office. The judge flipped through the pages, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. When Anna finished her testimony, She felt drained but lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She returned to her seat beside Miss Carter, who whispered, "You were so brave." The court recessed for deliberation, and Anna sat in silence, her hands still trembling. Across the room, Lauren glared at her, her carefully composed mask slipping for the first time. Michael avoided her gaze entirely. When the judge returned, the courtroom was tense with anticipation. She addressed the room with a firm but measured tone. After reviewing the evidence and testimony, this court finds Lauren and Michael Miller guilty of neglect and financial misconduct. Effective immediately, Anna Johnson will be removed from their care and placed in a safer environment. The gavel struck, and the sound echoed like a final blow to the Millers' carefully constructed facade. Lauren broke down in tears, wailing about injustice, while Michael sat rigid, his jaw clenched in barely concealed rage. As Anna stood to leave, she felt Miss Carter's hand on her shoulder. "You did it," Miss Carter said softly. "You told the truth, and now you're free." Anna nodded, her heart heavy but hopeful. For the first time, she believed that freedom might not just be an idea, it could be her reality. The courtroom's heavy wooden doors closed behind Anna as she stepped out into the bright afternoon light. The air felt crisper, lighter, but her legs still trembled as if carrying the weight of the trial. Miss Carter walked beside her, offering a steadying hand. The realization that it was over, that the Millers no longer had control over her, hadn't fully sunk in yet. In the parking lot, a social worker was waiting. She introduced herself as Mrs. Ellis, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a soft voice. She knelt to Anna's level and spoke gently. "Anna," she said, "we're going to find you a place where you'll feel safe and loved. I know this has been hard, but you've shown incredible courage." Anna nodded, unsure of what to say. Her gaze drifted to Miss Carter, who gave her a reassuring smile. "I'll be in touch soon," Miss Carter said, her tone warm but resolute. "You're not alone in this." The ride with Mrs. Ellis was quiet. Anna stared out the window, her mind replaying the events of the trial. She thought of Lauren's tears, Michael's clenched jaw, and the judge's firm voice as she delivered the verdict. It felt surreal, as though it had happened to someone else. She clenched the edges of her seat, trying to ground herself in the present. That evening, Anna found herself in a small, clean apartment where a temporary foster family had agreed to take her in. The family was kind but distant, treating her more like a guest than a child in need of comfort. She stayed in her room most of the time, unsure how to connect with them. It felt safer that way. A week passed, and Anna kept to herself, quietly attending school and avoiding questions from curious classmates. But one afternoon, Miss Carter showed up at the apartment. She knocked gently on the doorframe of the living room, her presence both unexpected and comforting. "Hi, Anna," she said, smiling softly. "Can we talk?" Anna hesitated, then nodded. She followed Miss Carter to the dining table, where they sat facing each other. Mrs. Ellis joined them, holding a folder that looked official. "I've been thinking a lot about you," Miss Carter began, "and I don't think you should have to keep bouncing around from one place to another. You've been through enough already." Anna's brows furrowed in confusion. She didn't understand what Miss Carter was getting at, but there was something in her tone that made Anna's heart race. Miss Carter took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Anna's. "I've spoken with Mrs. Ellis and my family. We want to offer you a permanent home, with us." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Anna thought she had misheard. "With you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Miss Carter nodded. "Yes. I know it's a big decision and I don't expect you to say yes right away, but if you're willing, I would love for you to be part of our family." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. The idea of having a real home, a place where she wasn't just tolerated but wanted, was almost too much to process. "Are you sure?" she asked hesitantly. "I've never been more sure of anything," Miss Carter said, her voice steady, "but it's your choice. Take your time." Anna nodded, unable to find the words to express what she was feeling. That night, she lay awake in the temporary foster home, staring at the ceiling. The thought of living with Miss Carter, of being part of her family, felt like a dream, one she was afraid to believe in. The next day, Anna approached Miss Carter at school. Her decision had taken root during the night, and though fear still lingered, hope shone brighter. "I want to," she said quietly. "I want to live with you." Miss Carter smiled, her eyes glistening. "You have no idea how happy that makes me." The transition happened quickly. Miss Carter's home was warm and welcoming, filled with the laughter of her daughter, Grace, and the calm presence of her husband, James. On Anna's first night there, Grace knocked on her bedroom door and poked her head inside. "Hey," Grace said with an easy smile. "We're making cookies. Want to help?" Anna hesitated, unused to invitations like this, but eventually nodded. In the kitchen, James showed her how to measure the ingredients, and Grace teased him about his overzealous stirring. The atmosphere was light, unforced, and for the first time in a long time, Anna felt like she could breathe. Over the next few weeks, Anna began to settle into her new life. She attended therapy sessions arranged by Miss Carter, where she slowly began to unpack the trauma she had endured. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the memories of the Millers' cruelty kept her awake, but she felt safe enough to face them now. Miss Carter and her family made it clear that Anna was more than a guest. They decorated her room together, choosing soft pastel colors and hanging a bulletin board where Anna could pin her drawings and pictures. Grace introduced her to her favorite board games, declaring that Anna had a strategic mind after she won her first round of chess. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Miss Carter turned to Anna. "How are you feeling?" she asked gently. Anna thought for a moment before answering. "It's different," she admitted, "but it's good. I feel safe." Miss Carter smiled, placing a hand on Anna's shoulder. "That's all we want for you." As the weeks turned into months, Anna began to believe that this new chapter of her life was real. She started to excel in school, her confidence growing with each passing day. Her bond with Grace deepened, and they often stayed up late whispering about books and movies. James taught her how to cook, and Miss Carter continued to support her both as a teacher and as a mother. One night, as Anna lay in bed, she pulled out the pink notebook she had once used to document her pain. The pages were filled with memories she no longer wanted to dwell on, but she didn't throw it away. Instead, she turned to a blank page and began to write about her new life, a life where she was no longer invisible, no longer unwanted. Her final words on the page were simple but powerful. "I'm home." Anna closed the notebook and placed it on her bedside table. She glanced out the window at the stars, a soft smile on her face. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel afraid. She felt free. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you are hooked by this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes. Share this video with your friends and write in the comments what you think about such stories. And to learn more, check out our other videos. There's more to come.